Okay, part two, where we left off last time was with this political cartoon. Funny thing is, I had to stop the video because I had to go teach a class. So I was trying to film this in between different periods. But we will be analyzing this cartoon live together in Zoom. So in your notes, just start analyzing it right now. Write down key things that you notice. Like simple observations. Um, what are the characters? What are the objects? What are those characters doing? And then go a little bit deeper. What's the overall meaning? What's the overall analysis of this political cartoon? Obviously, it's about the Spanish American War, if you haven't caught it by some of the items on the menu. But what is the message that this artist is trying to say? What's the bigger meaning about imperialism that we get from this political cartoon? I told you that Uncle Sam would come back. We're going to see a lot of political cartoons with him in it. Okay, what are the results of the Spanish-American War? It was a small war, but it actually had a bunch of results or effects afterwards. Okay, let's talk about Cuba. You remember the Teller Amendment, right? We promised that we were going to war against Spain, we were going to help out Cuba, and we weren't going to do it just to take over Cuba. That would be shady, right? So Cuba is technically independent. We did not annex Cuba. Military, because of the state and the condition of Cuba, they were in kind of desperate need for help due to a variety of reasons. But the military ended up giving food, clothes, schools, sanitation, and medical help to Cuba. Sorry. Cuba became a protectorate, which is basically a country whose affairs are partially controlled by a stronger power. You see the word control, so yeah, we're not going to just leave Cuba alone. No, we are going to partially control Cuba, but the other word you should see is partially. We're not annexing Cuba, we're not making Cuba a state, but are we still going to have influence? Are we still going to have power over Cuba? Yes. Why? Remember those reasons, 1, 2, and 3? Remember that? Military strength, new markets, cultural superiority. The United States wants Cuba's sugar, tobacco, and mining industries. Sounds like number 2. But military strength also is in there as well because of where Cuba is strategically located. Now, there was an agreement made between Cuba and America. That's the Platt Amendment. Cuba agreed to permit American diplomatic, economic, and military intervention. So they agreed to those things, and they leased Guantanamo Bay for American use. I'm going to add an extra credit in here about Cuba if you would like to go further into that subject. But that's the direct result after the Spanish-American War. If you know anything else about Cuba, you know that our relationship with Cuba is complicated. And if you're interested in that, you might want to do the extra credit. Okay, Puerto Rico. Why do we even want Puerto Rico? Why did we throw that into the deal at the Treaty of Paris? Well, look where Puerto Rico is located. Yeah, we want a presence in the Caribbean. We want influence in that area. You're going to later on see that we want a canal in Panama, and this is actually going to be a strategic spot for having influence in that area. We would like military control in that area. So you kind of see motivation number 1 coming through. And Puerto Rico had an interesting relationship. Puerto Ricans or our citizens, but not really. They have some rights in America, but Puerto Rico is also kind of independent. They actually do have a member in Congress that represents them, but that person can't vote. So it's a very interesting relationship between America and Puerto Rico. And again, there's an extra credit assignment on Puerto Rico as well, because it's still actually a topic in 2021. Should Puerto Rico be added as a state? So if that interests you, go do that extra credit. Okay, the Philippines is actually a very hard and sad story, in my opinion. So we were going to annex the Philippines, but the Filipinos revolted. The Filipinos used guerrilla tactics, so they used their land to their advantage. This is our home turf. You're not just going to come in here and take us over. The United States is asserting some military power, sending troops into the Philippines, and to watch over them, they made the Filipinos live in zones so that they can control the rebellion. And these Filipinos had to live in poor sanitation areas. There was a lot of disease, and many people starved. In fact, many Black Americans, many African Americans in America really sympathized for what the heck was happening to the Filipinos. Many of them actually went and supported their cause, talked about it openly, how they were against what was happening, because they can see similar ideas of forcing a people group that don't want to be taken over and forcing them to do the American way or whatever. It actually was 3 years of fighting. So I don't know if you want to call this a revolt, a battle, or a war, but it was 3 years of putting down or fighting with the Filipinos. And in 1901, the Philippines, they became a territory. Puerto Rico was a territory. The Philippines was a territory as well. So we didn't fully make them a state. America was controlling them, but the Philippines actually kept fighting back. And so much so that in 1946, actually right after World War II, the Philippines got their full independence and separated from us as well. So, the Spanish-American War. The actual war may have been tiny, but the United States is never going to be the same after this war. It had survived for over 100 years as an isolationist nation, an ocean away from European powers, and emerged as an industrial behemoth in the wake of Civil War. With its defeat of Spain and the acquisition of a far-reaching empire, the United States has arrived as a major player on the world stage. So again, this late 1890s, specifically with the Spanish-American War, it really did change America a lot. We have a big shift as a country. We have a big change in our foreign policy. So it expands even further, and it actually even deals with China. China was continuing to grow in its economic imports and exports, and a bunch of nations wanted to trade with China. To make sure that America wasn't let out of the loop, America and other countries took place in something called the Open Door Notes. Basically, it was a declaration saying that nations are going to share trading rights with China. Basically, no one gets claim on China because China is such a lucrative economic trading partner. The nations wanted to say, hey, it's an open door. We all want to trade with China. Well, how did the Chinese feel about that? There was a radical group called the Boxers. They were a Chinese group, and they were super against foreign influence. And in fact, they ended up, in the wake of all of this, all these nations trying to talk to them about their tradings and involvement, they actually just started killing foreigners. They killed hundreds of missionaries, people who were from other countries spreading their religion in China, and they also killed foreigners in general, people just not from China. And then also in the crossfire, they were also killing Chinese people who were sympathizers to this foreign influence. Nations had to come in, had to stop these mass killings, but thousands of Chinese people ended up dying in the wake of it all. So here we see a battle of nations wanting to be involved with China, but certain Chinese groups hating the idea of foreign influence. Why does this matter to us? Americans believed that the growth of the US economy depended on exports. We need other countries to trade with, basically. And China was a very important partner that we wanted to have. The United States felt that they had a right to intervene abroad to keep foreign markets open. So again, if it's so important to our economy, we do feel like we have a right to try to make sure that those markets stay open. And lastly, they fear that the closing of an area to American products, citizens, or ideas threatened U.S. survival. Again, this dependency on other nations. Not dependency in a bad way, but a dependency in regards to growing as a country. Okay, imperialism is heating up. We've already had the Spanish-American War. Now we're dealing with China. We've taken Alaska and Hawaii. And there are still mostly half of America that is in support. You could probably guess the types of people that would be in support of imperialism. Anyone who's benefiting, anyone in the business world, anyone in government, anyone in general. There are Americans that are benefiting from imperialism. But again, there's also a group, they have a very non-secretive title. They call themselves, you ready? The Anti-Imperialist League. Kind of like the Justice League, I guess, but the Anti-Imperialist League, and their issues range from everywhere. They don't like that, again, this could be more people stealing jobs. They don't think that the stuff that we're doing is legal. They have racial issues with this. They have moral issues with this. And here it is, again, another political cartoon. We see Uncle Sam here. He is quite large. He has a lot of territories written on his pants. I don't know if you can see it, but it says Texas, Louisiana Purchase, Alaska, Florida, California, Hawaii, Puerto Rico. Yeah, he has a lot of territories, even spanning back to like the 1800s in Manifest Destiny. Mexican-American War is even thrown in there. We have McKinley is his tailor. McKinley is sizing him up. Uncle Sam can get as big as he wants, and McKinley will make a perfect suit for him. Behind McKinley, you see enlightened, foreign policy, and rational expansionism. But what are those guys offering him over on the left? That's a weight loss elixir. So they're saying, hey, it's unhealthy to be that big. Here, take this elixir and you will lose weight. And what is on that bottle? Anti-expansion policy. So, some of the political cartoons that you see will be in support of US imperialism, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of a hint. Most of the cartoons you see will be anti-imperialist. I guess they're trying to express themselves through the cartoons. Okay, one of the last topics we'll talk about is kind of talking about this Panama Canal, something that Teddy Roosevelt was really, really, really passionate about making. So, as you guys can see, there's two purple lines. It's hard because you can't see me. I'm talking with my hands, but you can't tell. So there's two purple lines. Look at the one that goes all the way below South America. Like from New York City to San Francisco, look at that long purple line. That was the way that we had to ship things normally. If we needed to ship things on a ship or take our Navy, we had to go that way. We could put things on a train. Okay, we can do that. But if things needed to be put on a boat or a ship, either for trading purposes or military purposes, that long purple line is what we had always been doing. So what were some people planning? What was a dream that some people had? was making a man-made waterway, which you guys know is called a canal, that would shorten the trip. So look in the middle. Do you see the Panama Canal? Do you see how that would shorten the trip? Do you see how if someone or some country, if they were able to build a canal right there, could that be economically smart, strategic? Could other countries benefit from that? And could we charge them a little something something if they use our canal? What about for military reason, for military response? Would that be helpful to have a canal right there? Heck freaking yes. So Teddy Roosevelt, really wanted to make this a priority in his presidency. He wanted to make a canal. He wanted to reduce travel time for commercial and military ships. He said the United States would pay Panama $10 million plus an annual rent of $250,000 for the land designated called the Canal Zone. So again, we're not just going in there, busting in and taking over and taking Panama. We are paying for it. But again, Panama kind of doesn't have a choice to deny it. We are being very assertive with wanting to control this area. Now, they will, of course, benefit from this canal. They can benefit from tourism, from people coming through, different things like that. But America definitely would be benefiting the most from this canal. By 1913, a bunch of workers were employed. Many immigrants were the ones building this, but we did not take care of our workers back then. You guys know that. So there was a lot of accidents, a lot of disease, a lot of sketchy stuff happening in the creation of this canal. And in 1914, the canal opened. So again, another form of imperialism. It may look different than the Spanish-American War, but we see this idea of America expanding its influence and power for certain reasons. In this case, it's definitely motivations number one. Number two, and the fact that we think we can basically go anywhere might give you motivation number three. Okay, Roosevelt had a particular tagline when he was president. His foreign policy tagline was, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." What this is basically saying is, first, negotiate. First, we go with diplomacy. But if diplomacy doesn't work, we might use force. The United States would use force to protect its economic interests, specifically in Latin America. I don't know if you've caught that. Let me go back to the map. But you've seen that we've been very involved with Central America, Latin America, South America. We are the Western Hemisphere, we quote unquote kind of feel like is our territory. Now, there are some nations we don't even talk to. There are some nations we definitely don't even touch. But there are certain nations in the Western Hemisphere that we have economic interest in. And so imperialism definitely is going to take place in those areas. And Roosevelt is ready. He has a military background. He says, yeah, I'll be nice first, but if I need to use force, I will. The president after Roosevelt, I'm kind of grouping all these guys in here, but they all had little bits of imperialism. Wilson's was different. Wilson's was called the missionary diplomacy. He said that the United States has a moral responsibility to deny recognition to any Latin American government that it viewed as oppressive, undemocratic, or hostile to U.S. interests. Wilson does flip the script a little bit here. He is saying basically that we will cut off or deny Latin American governments that are those three words that you see, oppressive, undemocratic, or hostile. We will talk about this one in class, and I want you to answer that question in your notes. What are some of the good things about this foreign policy idea? And what are maybe some of the downfalls, the negatives of this foreign policy idea? Feel free to Google it too if you need some more information. I tried not to overload you too much. I'm just giving you a quick snapshot of how these different leaders are dealing with foreign nations. Okay, speaking of, whole Latin America, Central America, we got to talk about Mexico. There was a situation that happened in 1911, the Mexican Revolution. Mexico was dealing with a lot of internal rebellions of different people overthrowing the leaders, instituting a dictatorship. There's a lot of internal stuff going on. Well, why does America care? Well, of course, America had Mexican oil wells, mines, and railroads. We had Americans working in those oil wells, mines, and railroads. And when some Americans were killed in the crossfire during this revolution, even some oil wells that were owned by America, when those were attacked, the United States brought the military. Many Mexican people did not want the United States troops to be in there, and eventually it fizzled out, thankfully. We didn't go to a full-scale war. They were kind of fed up that our foreign influence was there, getting involved in their internal conflicts, and the revolution kind of ended. It died down. Why does this matter? The United States feels like they need to extend its reach of economic and political system, even if it's going to be through armed intervention. So this makes me really think of Teddy Roosevelt, this idea of we kind of feel like it's our right to extend our systems to different nations, even if it means bringing our military. Look at this political cartoon. The title is It's for His Own Good. We have Uncle Sam. And it says, come now, you've got to take it sooner or later, and you might as well take it now. He's trying to give Mexico a pacification pill. Basically, to pacify someone means to calm someone down. And what is the little children behind Uncle Sam? We see Cuba, Philippines, Nicaragua, and Panama. Look, we've pacified these people. They gave a fight, but we controlled them. So Mexico, get in line, because that's what we do as America. Gosh, even saying that sounds interesting. But that's what this political cartoon is saying about imperialism and about this event. Okay, you made it to the end. Are you so proud of yourself? The overall effects of imperialism. America is a world power. Boom. That is solidified. That is clear. It is not a question anymore. America is a world power. The United States has expanded foreign markets. We have built a modern navy to protect our interests abroad. And through different instances, we have become an international police power to make sure we're dominant in Latin America. That one comes with a lot of loaded information, but definitely write down your thoughts if you have them of us becoming an international police power, because that definitely occurred after this time period. So as you soak in the overall effects of imperialism, at the bottom of your notes, I want you to write the pros and cons to imperialism. What are some of the good things? What are some of the bad things of this time period? Of imperialism in general, U.S. imperialism. Go back through, look through the whole presentation, look through your notes, and see if you can find good and bad things about U.S. imperialism. One slide that I forgot, I think I accidentally skipped it, I'm sorry, was the wrap-up of the Spanish-American War. We're actually going to be talking about these questions in class, but I wanted you to think about them ahead of time. So, sorry, back it up in your notes, go back to where the Spanish-American War was, and answer these 3 questions. Informally is fine. They're in your notes. But get ready in class, have an answer prepared for these 3 questions. Okay? So with that, let me see if I can zoom to the beginning. Oh my God, I can. Look at me. So with that, thank you guys so much for sticking with me. I know this was a longer lecture, but I hope the notes were helpful. So I'll see you guys in class.